Hey everybody, Pete A. Turner, executive producer and host of your Break It Down show. I've got a fun guest for you today. His name is Brad Hauter. He is probably most notably known as the current head coach of the DePauw University men's soccer team. DePauw's a Division III school, but they are good at what they do. His career winning percentage is over 60%, and that says something in soccer. So I think you'll like who he is, but check out what else we could talk about with him. He is also been a TV producer. He's authored 2 different books, and I think also interestingly raises chickens, but rode a lawnmower across the nation to raise money for a charity for homelessness in Chicago, trying to prevent that stuff. And then he's like, you know what, I'm going to do it again. So he's driven a lawnmower for about, 5,000 total miles, maybe 6,000 total miles. Isn't that something? It's really neat. And so we talk about his life as a professional soccer player and what it takes to be someone who's, a ham and egg, or a guy who's out there trying to work hard and has to get by on hard work and guile rather than raw talent, but still managing to put together a long career as a professional soccer player, and then converting that into shaping these young men that he leads into better citizens. Because most people at Division III programs don't go and have 10-year professional soccer careers like he did. So anyhow, the big point here is Brad's really fantastic, and when he raised all that money for charity, it made me think, hey, this is the perfect time to put this episode up. This, of course, is the podcast version of the live episode. You can always see the live episode in the notes of the show. You probably all know by now that we do just about every single show as a live episode with released first. So the next thing I want to say to you is this. Scott and I are still on our journey across the nation. We are taking off from Dallas on Monday morning, 7:30, from the Live Lowe's in Arlington. That's right there at the stadium complex. And our plan really right now is to just get out there and raise as much awareness and money as we can on this last part of our trip. So we'll be taking off from Dallas today and up in Pecos. We're going to make a stop at Chad Prather's studio and hang out with Chad for a little while. And then we'll be from Pecos to Tucson to Temecula, where we'll have a welcome home party. If you want to join us anywhere along that route, we'll still be on I-20 for a while, then I-10, then I-8. If you're curious as to where we are, tip me up, Pete A. Turner, on all social media. Send me a text or a email, pete@breakitdownshow.com. Those are the big things. If you want to contribute, you can always go to Save the Brave, savethebrave.org, and contribute that way. Super simple. Click the donate tab, put a small amount of money in, and that'll help out. If you want to ride with us anywhere along that route, let me know. I'll let you know what the schedule is, and you can meet up with us. Anything we can do to help raise awareness for veteran suicide and help us to try to keep more veterans above the ground, because there's way too many of us killing ourselves. All right, that's the big things I wanted to talk about. Here comes Brad Hauter.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is Brad Hauter, and you're watching The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
I was saying before when we were trying to work, and thanks for being patient with me, it's hard to get these things done.
Yeah.
Like you're busy, I'm busy, schedules. We were supposed to have Shelly in here with us, and I hate that we don't have Shelly here. It's funny. And then I'm like, hey, not today, not tomorrow. How about 10 minutes late? Yeah, it's just so... But,
it's life. It's life. You got to deal with that adversity.
Exactly. So the thing I wanted to say is you're a coach at DePauw. You coach the men's soccer team. Division
Correct.
1?
Division 3.
Division 3. You dominate, though. Like a 690 winning percentage is, dude, that's really good.
We're pretty good. I mean, we're in that sweet spot that the school's demographic matches up with high-level soccer players. So that's always a plus. If you're at a school that doesn't have that, it becomes tougher and tougher to get that done.
How much in-game coaching is there obviously you're like yelling crap and encouragement, but how much, it's not like basketball where you're like, everybody, we're going to run this,
God, I wish we had timeouts. That would be awesome. But all of our stuff is, philosophically, we're putting together a game plan, what we want to do on that day. And then through our training, we're trying to put the guys into scenarios and problems where they have to solve the questions that we think that they're going to see on game day. Then once we get in there, there's not too much. It happens so fast, and they're the ones on the ball, and we can make some personnel changes. We can maybe make some tweaks in the way we're going to play. No timeouts, no quarter breaks. We just got to run with it.
Who is the Dennis Rodman of soccer, would you say? You know, and just for the audience, Dennis Rodman was an incredible rebounder, especially on the defensive side of the boards, but also just he would man up on the best person and because of his size, he could defend anybody and mentally get in their head and potentially break their star player.
Yeah, then you might know the name of the guy. It's escaping me right now. He's going on to Hollywood and become a movie star. He's kind of in a lot of action flicks, but he was just Vinny. I'll get it before the end.
All right.
But he was just a hammer. I mean, you hated to have that ball in between you and him and see him with a full head of steam coming up, because it wasn't just going to be a hard hit, but there was usually going to be something extra.
Yeah.
And he's brought that edge into his post-soccer career over in Hollywood, and he plays the bad boy very, very well.
Yeah, that kind of a player.
Vinny Jones.
Okay, actually, I do know Vinny Jones. I know maybe 25 soccer players because I do have an appreciation for it. I know Vinny Jones because I know Kobe Jones. I don't know Kobe Jones, but I know of him. And I'm like, oh, there's Joneses. And then that's how I separated those guys. But to have someone like that you're like, you see their number one player, don't let them breathe.
Right.
And in soccer, you can do that. You just run right next to them the entire game. Like you may score a goal, but I'll be standing next to you when you do, you know?
Right. And anytime the official looks away, there's going to be something.
Absolutely.
And that number one player knows it coming into that game. So depending on their confidence level and how much they're willing to get hit, that guy can be pretty effective even before the whistle blows.
Yeah. I played soccer in high school, JV soccer. I actually didn't, by the time I got to varsity, I had other things to do. But I was a pretty rough house goalie and we played in a league with a lot of I guess you would say just smaller players. And so like if there's a corner kick, I was going to get the ball and I didn't mind the contact. And you think about that, like at the goalie position, even just to have someone physical, because I wasn't a terribly gifted goalie, but I was intimidating because I didn't mind playing tackle football with no pads with my friends. And so, that's what a corner kick is tackle.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what's interesting is I was a goalkeeper as well. There's something that misfires a little bit in the heads of the guys that play in that position.
Yeah. Well, and you're not so much of the game. You're not in any part of the game, And also I had decided, and I don't know if this is a acceptable strategy, but if there was a one-on-one, I would just go and blast the player. Like they were going to pay a cost,
Vinny Jones.
Yeah. And okay, maybe there's a penalty kick. You were going to, it's one-on-one. The odds are like, if I'm coming, I'm coming to get you. I would say that I'm coming to get you. And then just absolutely annihilate him. But, was I out of the penalty box? Sorry.
That's actually the better place to foul him.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Then it's just like what is it, indirect kick or maybe a free kick? I don't know.
If you come out that hard, it's going to be direct.
Yeah, I came out that hard. The other thing is in pickup basketball, because this is I could play defense, I could see space, but if you set a pick, I was going to oblige you, and we were going to see who fell down, and then I'd be like, oh, sorry, man, my bad. Here's the ball,
Yep.
And it's just pickup basketball, but that was sort of like my mentality because I didn't have a lot of, I was an okay athlete, but I wasn't like gifted at all, Can you use a guy like that in soccer, even at the Division III level?
Always. It's the mentality. You take a look right now in the mental toughness and, dealing with adversity and overcoming, pressure and anxiety. That is something that's really missing in this generation. And so when you can get, in my opinion, if you can get guys that are run through the brick wall kind of guys, have the mental strength to overcome difficulties and recognize what their role is, there's a huge value in those kind of players.
Yeah. Do you draft or do you seek those kind of players out? Like, man, we really need another, run through a brick wall kind of guy, or do they sort themselves into your program anyhow because they're walk-ons or whatever?
A little of each, the kind of player that everybody is searching for is the ridiculously talented, smooth. You walk up to the field, you recognize that guy is different, but they don't always have it here to be able to be different makers. They may just have ridiculous skill, but haven't and it had it genetically, just had it from birth, hadn't had to carve their craft. Whereas you've got these other guys that have no talent, but will do everything possible to stay in the game. Those guys are a little tougher to spot because they don't jump out at you. You got to see them in certain situations where they just overcome that difficulty.
How do you coach that guy? like without turning him into a psychopath too, because, you know, if you tell me to run through that brick wall, there's a good chance I'm going to do it. And then I might be like, well, I'm supposed to run through every brick wall I see. And then next thing you know, like, you're like, hey dude, you got to stop annihilating people. We're not playing football, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think that comes down to the whole risk and reward question. And that's the thing we keep asking our players, regardless of your talent level. When you're looking at something, whether it is tracking a player, hitting a player, going into a 50-50 ball, what's the risk in the position you're at on the field? What's the reward? What's the time in the game? All those things factor into that decision. So you're trying to get them to think with more than just their heart. And, you know, if they're receptive to continuing to play at a high level, they're usually willing to adjust their game. Now, you don't want to rein them in too much because there's a lot of players that have been reined in, and, you know, we need those special guys that are willing to do whatever's needed.
What kind of player were you?
Well, I'll tell you, I think the thing that speaks volumes now, I absolutely hated it as a player. After college, I wanted to play pro and was fortunate to have a 10-year pro career and hated every contract negotiation because every year it was 10 one-year contracts. Nobody had enough faith to say, you're the long-term answer for this team. It was more of, you're the best right now that we can get, but we know we can do better next year. And so I didn't have natural talent. I mean, I looked at the guys in the team. I looked at guys in training camp, and I'm a Division III product, and I'm going against, you know, big-time Division I goalkeepers and programs. And so since I didn't have that level of talent, I had to be willing to outwork them. I couldn't go out at night at the level that they did, had to eat differently than they did, had to train differently than they did. But, you know, now I absolutely love the fact that that was my path.
Why?
Because I think it sharpens you. I've had to work for absolutely everything. And had it been where I'm naturally gifted and I come out and talent is able to open some doors for me, I might not have developed the work ethic and mentality to kick down doors that won't open.
How do you take the gifted kid and teach them that? Like, one of my examples for this kind of thing is Chuck Knobloch has no business having had a long, successful major league career, right? But he was just damned if he was going to be damned by his lack of everything. Someone like, gosh, Darryl Strawberry, you just look at his swing and you're like, this guy can do anything in baseball.
Right.
There's something with the adversity that the Chuck Knoblochs of the world get.
Right. That's a great question, because I don't know. I don't know that there is a recipe that would work with every player. I think some of the, when you look at the mentally tough individuals, whether it's in sports or business or just in life, you know, they've gone through some adversity in their life that may not work for the next guy. You look at, I just finished Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. You look at his adversity, that won't work for everybody.
Right.
So it'd be great if there was a recipe, A plus B equals mentally tough, but I've not found it. Maybe it is, and I just haven't identified it yet. Yeah.
That recipe's got to be partly identified by that person too, right? Like the person that's like, you know, maybe it's great. I'm going to use this example, then I'm going to shut the hell up. But on the Dodgers, they had Zach Greinke and they had Clayton Kershaw, two wonderful Hall of Fame caliber pitchers. And Zach will like, today I'm going to roll around on the muscle squisher for a while and then go eat a sandwich and go home and then pitch and do great. Clayton Kershaw's like, at 6:01 a.m., I will get up. I will brush my hair, 5 strokes on each side, you know, and like very regimented and absolutely determined to not let anything creep into his system and constantly improve it, you know?
Yeah. I look at that and I've got twins. And so I'm always wrestling with this thought of, is it genetic or is it environment? Are you wired a certain way? What is it?
I lost it. My R fell out. I made a sign. I got this new toy. And I wanted to use it, but I realized
it's close.
The R fell out. Please continue while I find your R.
Yeah, I wrestle with it. I try and, wonder is, how much of it is genetic and you're predisposed to be a certain way, and how much of it is environment and the experiences you go through, and how much is it a combination of each. And, I've watched our twins grow up eating the same stuff, same kind of rules, same house, same almost everything, and they are completely different. So I'm not trying to absolve myself of the responsibility of being a good dad, but I do think there's a lot of it is, hey, you're wired this certain way, and we might be able to polish some edges for you, but you are who you are.
Now
there you go. You got the R.
This is the new edition. We'll be having these things back in the background.
Sweet.
So just imagine that.
Love it. Love it.
There's a big piece with that nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
And we're finding out more and more that really nature is such a massive part of it, because you can have twins, but they're not they're genetically the same, but they're not.
No. Yeah.
You know, and so they do have different buttons you have to push and levers. Where do you have to grow as a coach?
Patience, I think. I can't stand losing. I think what will drive me out of the game is I don't handle it well. I'm 55, almost 56 years old, and I'm emotionally immature if I lose games. And so I've been able to, having kids and being able to kind of rein in my competitive spirit, or at least hide it, has been effective for me. But I get this much joy. There's a fraction of a millimeter of joy out of a win. And then I'm on to the next problem that I got to solve. But man, if we lose a game, I am consumed with it.
Yeah. I can identify with that. And I'm not a terribly competitive person, but man, there are times when I just cannot let a game, and I don't play many games anymore. My body's too beat up and everything, but I definitely can identify with that level of maturity to care enough to be passionate, but not be consumed. Yeah. It's tough.
Great way to put it.
Yeah. Is there, and you don't have to answer this because I don't want to put you on the spot, but you graduated from DePauw, you've been there forever. Is there a job that you would take that would take you away from what you're doing now?
I have to say that I've lived, I think, like 5-6 different lives at a time at the same time. And so I have all of my, kind of all the buckets that I'm interested in getting filled up and in working on. I have them all with me. My life is in a good place. I'm not looking to switch. I think when I'm done as a coach, I'm done at DePauw.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because, as a soccer guy, as a pro player, you get to go coach the team you were on. And I mean, obviously you love where you're from. And so it's a neat spot to be in. It's like any of the coach of the big, like really big, gigantic SEC schools or whatever. You really are in the perfect place. Like this, it's going to be really hard to find a better slot, at least for right now in your life, I'm assuming.
Right. And I understand where I'm at. I understand the players that I get in. I think the thing that will, the two things that may drive me out of the game is, the inability to ever accept losing. And then when I start recognizing that I don't connect with players as well in this generation, and it's getting tougher and tougher. And part of that is me. I'm less willing to compromise on some lines in the sand. And if I believe in them and I believe there's a reason for them, and I can stand behind them and articulate the value for them, I only have so much patience to over-explain it and continue to explain it and continue to not meet my expectations. And so those would be the two things that could have me out of the game. But when I'm out of the game, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be wearing the DePauw colors. What's
your philosophy in general? Because, as a coach, you're also a life mentor too. I mean, you got to win games and all that kind of thing, but you've got to get these guys prepped for the world.
Yeah. And I've been working on this question for 20 years in my head. Can't quite put all the dots on the I's and cross all the T's, but I think there is this desire that we all have internally, organically, to be relevant. And so, when you look at it from a team perspective, if your last guy on the roster feels relevant, he feels he has value to that team, he's going to be engaged. As soon as he feels like he has no relevance in this team, in this organization, his energy he may still want to come out and play, but his energy will dissipate. And then the guy in front of him doesn't feel the pressure. And then it sort of just moves towards mediocrity for the team. And so I think this desire to be relevant extends into the business world. We want to be, as family members, I want to be relevant to my family. I want to be a part of my kid's life and be a good husband and be a good father. In my community, I want to be relevant. And in my job, you want a job that, one, you feel is relevant. You feel you're making a difference. And two, that you're relevant in that job, making a difference. And so, if we can teach our leaders and our kids on our team to make sure everybody, they don't have to accept a role, because if you're not starting, certainly you don't want to be in that role, but you do have to understand the value of that role and what you bring to that team. And if we can get everybody feeling relevant and engaged, I think that's a great life skill to take on into their families, into their communities, into their jobs afterwards.
How do you keep a non-starter in a game where starters are if there's a game where it's hard to get on the field, it's soccer, because there's just only so many subbing you're going to do. How do you keep an academic minded kid that loves soccer, how do you keep them engaged if they're, second string and they're going to play not even an hour in the whole season, maybe, or if they do, it's garbage time. How do you keep them on a Division III team? How do you keep them even concerned and not like, it's time for me to hang these cleats up and play a rec league and get back to studying?
Yeah. Well, there's two parts to that question. One, there's the kid that's the right decision, is that they might not have the talent, or they might not have the edge, or they're not willing to do the work to get to that next tier, and life is calling them in a different direction. There's nothing wrong with that. At some point, the game burns out in everybody. And I don't want to say, look, you've done this your whole life, you're talented, you stay here because we'd like you a part of us, when life is calling you in a different direction. Yeah. So that kid's a little bit different. That when it's time to go, I'm never going to try and talk a kid into staying. The other part then, I think, is that relevant part is you got to make that player understand their value in this organization. And that goes to business, and that goes to, and I think that goes into that cultural relevance thing, because we have to change the measuring stick of the players. The measuring stick isn't how many starts do you get, what are your statistics, how many minutes do you get? It's how important are you to keeping our group moving in the right direction. And if your value system is only on minutes, you're not in control of that. I might not even be in control of that. You might not be the best. Am I going to force you in there because you're not the right guy in that moment to get you minutes and make you feel relevant, and you're not going to perform well? So I think it is trying to get into the mindset and change that cultural belief that to be relevant, you have to be the starter, you have to be the star, you have to be this.
Yeah, I can understand that. What's the time commitment for a Division III soccer team on an excellent team? Like, what do you expect from these guys?
Yeah, that's great. I'd love expectations to be met, but I think it takes a special individual. One of the reasons I like Division III is I think you need to get away from my voice. I think you need to get away from the game on occasion. There are guys, when the season's done, they're immediately back on the field in the weight room working on stuff. I don't want to micromanage. My expectation is, first is character. It's who you are as a person. I expect you to represent us and represent yourself well. The next part is work ethic and fitness, and those two are married, because if you don't keep yourself fit, your work ethic, no matter how good it is, just can't perform. And then the third is talent, in keeping your technical ability and your tactical ability sharp. My expectation is for all of those things to stay polished. I'll put the programs in front of you. When we're out of season, I expect you to still adhere to those. When we're in season, I expect you to adhere to them, and I shouldn't have to swat you into place.
Yeah. Yeah. If you were to estimate, like, what does it cost in a week? Is it 25 hours of time, or what's your sense?
Yeah, that'd be different, because we got some real grinders who in the morning are up 6:01, in the weight room before class, and watching what they eat and making sure they go to bed in time and doing all the training. So there are some guys that probably commit 4.5 hours a day, but I would say on average, we're probably a 2.5 hour a day commitment.
Yeah. Okay. And you're right. Like you're thinking about soccer. You're, maybe on your way to class, you're working on some aspect of your footwork or anything. They can always be doing something, right? Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. When you look at taking the program somewhere, obviously you're successful because you win damn near 70% of your games, but where are you taking the program? You must have some goal that's higher for you to dig into.
Yeah. I'd like to win national championship. I think that's the ultimate goal, is to be the best in what you do. And, we talk about measuring sticks and making sure that you're correct in your, kind of your evaluation of things. That's the goal. And that is going to be the target every year, as far as performance on the field. Then I roll back and I look at the other side of the goals, and it's, there's 5 to 8 to 10 men graduating a year, and as they go out into the communities, are they going to be good in their communities? Are they going to take the character, work ethic, and talent model that we've presented them with, and are they going to start to pay that forward in their communities and with their kids and the people that they coach? So there's two folds with it. This is, there's 430 Division III teams. One is going to win the national championship. 429 are not. Yeah. But we're all going to produce seniors and that next generation of leaders.
Is that your main job, producing leaders?
Yeah, I think it is. I think, and it's really polishing, because I'm a complete optimist, but I have lost the belief that if for 18 years you have not had good teachers, good coaches, disciplined parents, and had structure, I can't fix it in 4 years.
Yeah.
And so while I'd love to take credit and produce the great leaders that come through our program, I'm just polishing edges and keeping them on track. But it's the job that their parents, their teachers and coaches have done before they get to me.
When you look at the goals of a Division III program, and obviously winning championships is a thing, is that a realistic expectation to try to, I mean, obviously it's a goal, right? But what's good enough? Like, what's like, oh my God, we got into the tournament and we went, through the second round. Like or is it just like, is it all or nothing?
Depends on the day you catch me. But yeah. I think the honest answer to that is going to be each team has a different ceiling. And how far can you push that ceiling? There are some teams that come in and a national championship is a goal, but there's a whole mountain we got to climb before that's even possible. And there's other teams that come in and you're like, this is a team that can actually get there. Now you need to stay healthy. You need to have a little bit of luck. But yeah, so the answer would be different based on the personality and the talent, each team and their drive and their commitment and their ability to stick to expectations and be accountable and commit.
As you get a team ready and you recognize that they're, championship grade, how deep is that pool of teams in the nation? Out of the 430 teams, are there 35 championship caliber teams that they have a chance? Like if they're on the pitch and any day they can do it?
When you get into the national tournament, and there's 64 teams, just like March Madness, right, that are picked. On any given day, any of those 64 teams might be able to make it all. It's very different. Like the 16th seed in one of the pods in March Madness may have a chance to get to the next round.
Yeah.
In soccer, there is a heartbeat. They do have a chance to get there. But I think legitimately you've probably got your top 20 that really have the ability to put the icing on the cake.
And then would you rather attack someone's strength or their weakness, or hide your weakness and protect your strength? Like, how do you, when you try to build a strategy, and I'm sure it's modular, mm-hmm. You're like, I'm going to put Ricky on that number 6 guy and harass him all day. And then we're going to keep whatever it is. How do you put that together, decide on what's going to work? It's not just total soccer question these days,
No, it's a great question, because that would be one that would depend on the scenario and the opponent. If Ricky in that example is going to take out that player and just man mark him, and we're going to play you 10 on 10. What do your 10 look like versus my 10?
Yeah.
And now what talents do we have versus what weaknesses do we have? And is there something we can hide, or is there something we can do? Ideally, I'd love to roll in there and say, okay, we have the talent, we've got the depth, we've got this is how we're going to play. They're going to have to adjust to us. Yeah. It's going to be high paced, high pressure. We're going to take it to them and try and not intimidate, but make this game at such a fast and aggressive pace that we'll see if they want to play or not. It doesn't always work.
Yeah. Have you ever pulled the tape out and done the Hoosiers and be like, this court is the same size as our court?
Yeah, there was one time very early in my career. I was at a school up in Minnesota. We were down playing a team that was ranked number 1 in the country down in Texas. And both teams were walking to the field at the same time. And our captain, there was one gate to get through. Our captain stopped our team and let them walk through. And I lost it in that moment. I'm like, you can't, I understand, let's be polite and let's maybe share that way through the gate, but you can't defer to them walking into the field and say, hey, you're sending a message right there at the beginning. And so at that point, it's like, look, this is a Division III team. You're a Division III team. They got a couple of players that can go pro. We got a couple of players that can go pro. You got to get out there and decide it on the field. Do not bend over for these guys.
Obviously, DePauw is a fantastic institution academically. That's like, one of the strengths. But how much time do you spend in living rooms saying your kid really has a shot to play here, and, who knows where they go, but they're going to get a DePauw degree out of it? Is that a big part of what you do?
Huge. Yeah. Okay. Right now it's virtual. It's all through Zoom and things like this. But, for our top kids, we will sit down in their living rooms and we will explain, hey, if something goes wrong, you have an injury or something happens, you are leaving with a degree that's going to open every door on this planet.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a quality school. And then when you look around the soccer world, who else is just like, you look at some of those, again, the SEC coaches, and it's remarkable. Like, they must just, I don't know what kind of fairy dust they sprinkle around, but they are so good at this. And, and Nick Saban is the guy, like every time you hear about a story, like he knows about designer curtains and he comes in and he just picks that thing and gets that mom, like he just woos them.
Right.
Who's like that in your world? And are you like that?
No, I think that comes from, the accomplishments. And I think Nick Saban has a resume that it'd be really hard to argue that if you're coming in to recruit against him. I think when you're starting to look at soccer on the men's side, I think IU is probably in that conversation. 8 national championships through, 3 different head coaches have won them. So there's a lot to say about that program there. And then you look on the women's side, you look at a guy like Anson Dorrance out at University of North Carolina. I think he's won 21 national championships, and he's been the same guy that's been there the whole time. And so, some of it I think goes through the program's tradition and legacy, and some of it goes to the individual like the Sabans and the Dorrances who are driving that ship.
When you got that kid that's thinking IU, or maybe you guys, and you can say, hey, legitimately, you're going to play on my team. Like you're going to be, a team captain. Do you owe it to the kid to go get not the IU degrees are better, and I'm just using these examples, but if they've got a shot to go somewhere huge, do you owe it to the school or to the kid to really go, this is the best call for you? I mean, how does that work for you? That's got to be, is that even something you consider?
Yeah, you have to, because if the kid comes in and it's not the right fit, or they walk away from an opportunity because of an opportunity that you sold them and it wasn't the right opportunity for them, that's going to end badly. I take a look at we got a kid out of Oklahoma City a few years ago, number 1 recruit. And I just saw him in December at a tournament and called him up from the field, even though he was playing, left him a message. And he was on a full ride to a Division I school. He had to sign his papers that week. And I said, no harm in looking at us. And if you don't like what you hear, go ahead and sign. So we put together this package and we said, okay, look, here's what you're getting for the full ride. Here's what we can get our costs down to. We can't be the same as them. You're going to have to pay more to come here. Now let's take a look at graduation rates, placement rates, average starting salary, and let's play that out over the course of a career. So at that point, now we're sitting here and we're saying, okay, you're going to invest $24,000 more through your 4 years of coming here, but the payoff on the back end is a $750,000 increase in career earnings if just averages play out. Would you, if you're a gambler, even if you're an investor, would you invest $24,000 for $750,000 down the road? That's a hard thing to say no to, unless that $24,000 just is beyond reach.
Yeah. And if the
we got him.
If the kid's an Oklahoma kid, like there's only so much you can do about that. But it is doable though, for sure.
Yeah. We got him, and he went on and played pro for a couple of years. So it was the right fit on both sides.
When a kid comes to you and says, "Am I good enough to go to Premier League or Bundesliga?" How do you even answer that question?
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here, and if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
When a kid comes to you and says, "Am I good enough to go to Premier League or Bundesliga?" How do you even answer that question?
Then why are you talking to me? If that's the case, you've been identified at 14, 15, 16 years old, and you're already in some academy program. When there's a kid that's 17, 18 years old and we get this, hey, no, I'm going to go Division I, or I'm going to go pro. No problem. I assume you're on the national team right now, or you're in one of the academies. No? Okay, well, call me if that dream doesn't work out. We'll be here.
Yeah. How many kids make it to Bundesliga from the States in a year, say? Is it? And I'm saying Bundesliga, any of the Premier Leagues,
Yeah. Well, you can start looking at, I don't want to say second tier pro teams, but when you start looking at Premier League, Bundesliga, Spain, Italy, France, some of the Spain, the higher leagues, there's also a secondary pro league. Like the first league in Scandinavia and in Denmark is a great place. You can make a good living there. And then those clubs survive by finding talent that's off the radar and then selling it to the bigger clubs. And so there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of Americans who are in that system. I think right now in the top premier leagues, we might have half dozen to a dozen guys that are making an impact.
How much of that is part of your job is to go, here's the path, like you should try out for the Nordic League, or you should try out for this, or let me talk to my buddy over in Italy to get you at least on a, whatever. Right. Like how much of that is part of your job for the kid that really does want to play, even if they're going to be a gamer,
Right. A lot. And I got 2 guys right now that we're working. I had a call with an agent from Israel about 2 weeks ago with one kid. And, we're also talking to pro teams here in the U.S. And so that's a part of it. If you're putting your faith in us to get you prepared and have an opportunity at that level, then on the back end, I have that responsibility to actually fulfill some of the things that we discussed through the recruiting process.
And then what about folks that are like, they graduate as seniors, you guys do the senior day thing. What about moving straight into some kind of Indiana-based corporate job that's like, hey, we just want to support all DePaul kids? Like there must be a pipeline. Yeah. And we're not talking anything illegitimate for the audience. We're talking about like legitimate, things. But there must be people that are like, we love kids from DePaul, and I particularly love soccer kids. Like how about that part of the system?
Yeah, there's kind of 2 examples of that. I think when you go through DePaul and we're considered a high academic institution, right. If you look at Fortune 500 companies throughout the United States, you're going to find somebody up there with a DePaul degree pulling the strings. You may not know it, but if you do your research, you're going to find astronauts, TV people, presidents, CEOs, CFOs. You're going to find them there. And so there's a good network because they understand the education you've got, that for internships, it's very easy for us to set those up. I forgot what the second part was. It was probably earth-shatteringly brilliant, but I forgot it.
But just in general, like that pipeline to get out, does that help you remember anything? Like, how does that work for kids who are truly done playing soccer? Obviously, the DePaul connection on the inside. Was there some other aspect? Does that refresh your memory?
Yeah, we have a center that when you come in, helps you build a resume, helps you practice interviews. And so you don't go into these things cold. And then we'll actually set up internships and co-ops. And that's a big part of it too. You may dream of, I want to do this. But if you don't do an internship and actually get in there and shadow somebody and see what it's like, you may not really like that. And so the internships, and we're pretty big on studying abroad and doing internships because it's that real life experience that gets you to understand, is the degree and the path that you're on really the one that you want to be on?
Yeah. Boy. Yeah. How many people get that right? Like that number is pretty small to actually be on the path and figure out. We ask a lot of 18-year-olds, like you have to be on the path, and what 18-year-old knows the path? You're still learning things as a coach in your 50s. Yeah. I'm 50, and I'm like, I'm about to figure some stuff out.
Well, that's where I think, the path is a great analogy for this, because I think we put our kids on the wrong path. And I think that kind of relates to the conversation we had, where your relevance as a team member is based on starting and based on playing time. And it's almost the same thing, the path that we put and it's not us. I think it's just kind of our culture right now. You look at magazines, you look at TV, you look at commercials, you look at ads. Most everything is telling you, you need more hair, your teeth need to be whiter, you need to be thinner, you need to wear these clothes. Yeah. Everything tells our kids they're not good enough, And so, the things that actually provide this good dopamine hit and this intrinsic value to who they are, we've changed that for, you got to have the right shoes, you got to have the right amount of likes on something like this. So we've kind of changed their value system. And so the path that they're on sometimes is not the one that really speaks to, I don't mean to get too far off track. It's not the one that speaks to their inner spirit and what they're called to do, what's going to make them happy, what's going to give them a fulfilling life. But they're on a path because they think that's the path they're supposed to be on. It's got a nicer car, it's got a bigger house, and there's nothing wrong with those things, as long as it lines up with those organic goals that are in your heart.
Parents are a big part of that, because
Huge.
They want the best for the kid, and they don't know the path. They just know it's that away, right? And so they're trying to compel their kid. And parents are weird, because I'm a parent, you're probably a parent. Oh yeah, you have twins, so you're a parent, and so you're like, that's the path right there. But we know in reality, it's really, that's the path. But we just need them to go that way. And a lot of times, when you see your kid, you see the 6-year-old version of your kid. And you're like, you're not going to be able to put your jacket on tomorrow,
That's a great way to put it. That's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I told my daughter, I'm like, when I tell you to put your jacket on, and she's 20, at the time, it's just my way of saying I love you and care about you. I know you know how to get your jacket. It's just I have to say
Right.
something, and that's easy to say, you know? So talk a
Right.
bit about dealing with the parents, because it's such an interesting thing, because they want the best, but sometimes, like, get the hell out of the kid's way and let them be the best they can be, you know?
Yeah, because I think so much of us growing as individuals is about failing and getting back up and failing and getting back up. And you know, you sit down with a lot of parents, they don't want their kid to fail. And I get it. I don't want my kids to fail.
Yeah.
And it's painful to watch your kid go through that. But they're stronger on the other side. And so to deny them that failure denies them that growth and that learning experience. So, you know, when you sit and parents are like, you know, is my kid going to start this year? What's going to be the role for my kid, and X, Y, and Z? And you're like, you know, they're going to have to earn it. And that's going to be a series of ups and downs, and we'll be there for them on the downtime, and we'll be there for them on the uptime. But it is a tough conversation, because as parents, we do not want to see our kids struggle.
Yeah. And yet they have to. We all know that we learned almost
Right.
everything we know through errors, you know?
Yep.
It's a funny thing. I had on a guy, he's a doctor. He studies brains and tries to make brains.
I listened to that podcast.
Did you? And he's a soccer player.
I did.
What are your
He did. Yeah, he was.
What are your thoughts? He's like, I had to stop heading the ball because, like, I've got these $250,000 in medical loans. And he's like, yeah, I think we have to move to chest traps and other things. What are your thoughts as a coach? Does that impact you at all with how you teach these kids how to play?
Yes and no. I look at it, and I think it comes to the egocentric nature of who I am, in that, you know, I've had concussions. I've played the game. I've not shied away from hitting. I'm in my 50s. I feel like I'm okay.
Yeah.
So my life experiences have said one thing. The studies are telling me something different.
Right.
And then I go back to, you know, genetically and backstory. Each one of these kids is different. Each one of them has a different brain and is susceptible to different kinds of trauma. And each one of them has had a different diet that has helped, in that podcast, in which the doctor was talking about, you can change your brain chemistry by eating correctly and changing a few things here. So if the kid hasn't eaten correctly and they're doing it versus a kid that, there's so many different factors and elements in there that it's on my radar, and I've got concern with it. I just don't know where that line is right now.
I know we've talked almost the whole show about soccer, but I'm just fascinated by what you do. So this is great. We'll probably have to have you come back on. But I want to ask you about not like your team strategy, but, like I made a total soccer joke, because in America, we're not the premier country at soccer. We're not bad at it. How do you evolve, like, what you do as a coach? Like, are you looking at, the premier leagues and going, oh, look at that, and adding in elements? Or what do you do to push yourself to be a relevant coach,
I love that question. That might be the greatest question in coaching right now for soccer coaches, because never in our history has soccer been on television more than it is right now.
Yeah, it's everything.
And between FIFA on Xbox and watching soccer 24/7 on TV, these players come to us and say, I want to play like Barcelona.
Wow.
I'm like, well, give me the players Barcelona has, and we can play that way.
Yeah.
So, I think you can take and tweak a few things. You see a different system, or you see a different way of doing things, and you can adjust it to fit the level that you're at. But it doesn't translate apples to apples, because the skill level and the athleticism at that elite level is so much higher that it doesn't translate exactly.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's such a hard thing to see. I mean, like we feel like we see football when we watch it, but not really. And I'm talking American football here. Not at the level that, Bill Parcells sees it. And I'm just using old coaches just because, never mind the modern coaches. Bill Walsh, all those guys, they saw the game at a different level. And they're looking at where the foot lands, specifically like inches. Like,
right.
Your foot cannot be like this, and hyper focused on detail. But is that the same thing? It's like, I look at soccer, and we were taught about triangles because, that's the best we had. And, we just try, and that is a useful thing. It's defeatable, but just getting that part right was hard.
Yeah. Yeah. If the game plan, if we can stick with the game plan at 60-70%, then we're going to be pretty effective on that day. There are some elements that we can't control that you're going to have to go off script. But when you start looking at those minute details, so when we're in passing drills, the ball has to be hit with the right weight, because it has to get there in a time that doesn't allow the defenders to shift. it has to be to the correct foot so that the player that's receiving it has the ability to do something with it instead of having to prepare the ball and then do something with it. So it's the little micro things that are the difference between, you know what, we get the ball from that side of the field to that side of the field, or we get the ball from that side of the field and effectively and dangerously get it to this side of the field.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's always about creating space, either taking it or creating it. And if you can do those things well, whether it's with speed or muscle or brains or whatever, that's how I figure about soccer is just, can you create problems for the other team because you've created an opportunity through space,
Right. And that's you take a look at a lot of defending right now, and it's ball-oriented defending. So if you bring a ball over to one side, it's going to shift the defense to that side. It's going to open up that space on the other side. So typically right now when you're seeing a team attack one side, they're really trying to set up that opportunity where what you just talked about, the space on the far side.
Well, that sounds like Kobe Jones. Like all I need you to do is be fast and kick this ball down the open side and then create an opportunity. Because that's that guy. I mean, he's got, and at least, and listen to me with my crappy soccer knowledge, I think he's got the most national team caps, because he could always do that. He was never going to score 15 goals, that kind of thing, but he always created a problem, for the defense, because if he got it, you were going to have a problem with speed,
Yeah. And that, speed is you can't teach it, you can polish it, and it's a game changer when there's somebody in there, because sometimes you have to shift more guys into that space just to deny them the opportunity to be able to run free. And that's going to open up other areas on the field.
It's interesting when you think about players like Kobe Jones, because he's not particularly, I can't play soccer at all, but he wasn't particularly brilliant, let me use somebody else because Kobe doesn't play anymore, but, sort of recent. Vinny Del Negro played in the NBA for almost 20 years. You would never pick him on your team. You would be like, like if you were to do a draft, he would be one of the last round players picked. And yet there he was every year, because what he did well, and had great hair and go out and run point guard for you, But I mean, that's sort of how Kobe is. Like, you wouldn't go, that's the guy that's going to dominate this thing for me. There's a lot of other players that do that, but damn, they're really good at the one thing that they do, and you can use the hell out of it as a coach.
Yeah, and then I think outside of the hair, I'm not going to take anything away from that, but he goes on to become a coach. So obviously he's got a basketball IQ that allows him to solve problems at a high level, and it was recognized. And there's times when, you may not have it physically, but as long as you can keep solving those problems and stay a step ahead of the other team, there's value.
I'm going to change gears. How close did you come to being a full-time, big money Hollywood TV producer? I mean, you've produced TV shows. That's certainly a common path for someone who's done what you've done, but here you are doing something totally different. So how close was it for you? You're like, you want to live in Indiana, obviously, and people go to Hollywood all the time and go, I hate it here, and go move somewhere else. Talk about that part of your life.
I don't know the official answer to that. I back in 2003, I was called into Lorne Michaels' production company to have a meeting about a show. And at that time, my kids were 4 years old. I got 4-year-old twins. I'm a soccer coach in Indiana. And my concern is Broadway Video, Lorne Michaels' company, has got production houses in LA and New York. And I can move to either one of those places to start this TV show. And if they don't promote it, if nobody watches it, if it bombs, I'm an out-of-work soccer coach in New York or LA. There's no, the Price is Right isn't calling and saying, hey, Brad, we saw your great 2-week run on this show that bombed. So it's really difficult to get back in collegiately. And so at that point, we had the contract, we talked, I said, I can't do it for these reasons. And then it became, well, we'll fly you out in the morning to New York. It's an hour and 45-minute flight. We'll fly you back. You can stay in Indiana. I'm like, it's not at this place where it's working. So when you start looking at the dollars of Lorne Michael Broadway Video conventional way, I don't know where that path would have gone. The fact that it wound up doing it ourselves in Indiana has been fun. We've maintained control. It's had a, what are we at? 17-year life now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And I guess we should say, to be fair, like, you are a TV producer. It's just, there's that other path where, you end up in New York, you end up in LA, that kind of thing. What stories do you want to tell next?
Well, if we go back to that relevant conversation, It's a 20-year. I'll give you the story on the 20 years. So I changed my relevance and didn't even know it. I think it sneaks up on you sometimes, or it was always changed from the beginning. And I just woke up, and it happened I was very fortunate to be selected to be the spokesperson for Keep America Beautiful. And we had this campaign where we drove a riding lawnmower across the United States to raise money and awareness for the charity. And it was important to me on a lot of different levels, philosophically, charity, a whole bunch of reasons it aligned with my values. But on it, we were doing 15, 20 interviews a day. You're on CNN, you're on Good Morning America, you're on The Late Show. And my value, I got a little full of myself, not a little. I think I was still pretty much the same person I was, but my dopamine hits came off of these phone calls and people wanting to talk to me and reporters and being featured on certain shows. And when I got to New York, which was our final stopping place, they flew my family out. And so we went to Toys R Us on Times Square, and they got a big Ferris wheel inside the store. And we are lined up. I'm taking my kids on the Ferris wheel, and these kids come running around the corner with notebooks in hand and a pen to get autographs. And I big timed my family. I'm like, oh gosh, guys, I'm so sorry that you have to be a part of this and see this, and I'm loving it because it's the dopamine hit that I've trained myself to like. And my wife, who had gotten a little fed up with me at that point, says, "It's not you, Brad. The kids from Spy Kids 2 are standing in front of us." Sure enough, the kids come in. And at that point, I realized, what have I become?
Yeah.
And so when I start looking at the things that I want to create next, I think there's so much problem with anxiety, depression, loss of self-worth, suicide, drug dependency, alcohol, self-medicating, that a lot of that is because I think we're on the wrong path instead of the one that we feel like, if you're an artist, you need to be an artist instead of doing X. If you are a musician, be a musician instead of X. Not that X is wrong, but X isn't for everybody. So I think the next thing I'd love to create is something in that vein that recalibrates relevance.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point with like depression and, when you think about your kid, if they get into a depressive state, and whether your kid's your teen kid or your own kid, you want to flip the world over to help them, but it's so hard. Like, you don't want to leave any rock unturned, but sometimes overturning every rock just exacerbates the problem. And it's just such a horrible thing to have to deal with. And, now you're trying to coach through COVID and trying to, keep kids that are built to play soccer and all the time. And you're like, hey, I know running outside is supposed to be the healthiest thing ever for you, but we're not going to be able to do that right now.
Yeah. And you look at that depression and that anxiety that kids have today. And we talked about it earlier. We're with 2.5 hours a day, and they have 21.5 hours where it's social media, TV, all of these other things that are presenting them with anxiety, or you're not good enough, or you didn't get enough likes, or you're being cyberbullied, or you've got all these other things going on that can negatively impact them. What motivated you? I know a bit of your backstory with your service, and thank you. I really appreciate the service and sacrifice.
Yeah.
What got you started in this direction?
So when I was a spy, my job was to be basically a reporter. I had unique access, and I had to find out the unknown unknowns. Like I'm describing a reporter, like Shelley Smith from ESPN. She said the same thing. Like, that's my job. I have access. I'm supposed to tell people things they can't find out otherwise. So that's my job. And that it continues to be my job. It's just, the show is an intel report. Like, no one was going to know Brad Hauter, from my audience until all of a sudden here you are. And they now get to know what it's like to be a coach at a high level and a TV producer and all these other things. So just that ability to continue to do the same kind of thing, tell stories, but just not have to do it in such a desperate, hopeless place. Because, man, it's hard. It's hard to be around a bunch of folks that don't have hope, and you can take away their hope for them when you see the challenges of a conflict zone. It's not enjoyable, and they tend to blow people up there. And I didn't want to get blown up anymore. Gosh, I got blown up a bunch. So that was it. Like, I wanted to get into stories, and the path has been rocky and dangerous and all that kind of stuff. But here I am still doing it, 6 years later. So it's pretty cool to be able to do
that.
It
is. That is it, and that's one of those things, following something you're called to do. And, I listen to the people you've had on, and, what was it? Was it the Anthem girl you had on also recently?
Janine. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're listening to all these different stories, and there are some people that, I've heard of, and there are some people that are off the radar that have some interesting stories. And it's cool because I think if you listen to it, you can connect with all of them on some level.
Yeah, I want to go to all 50 states and sing the national anthem. I want to have to.
Crazy.
She went to a donkey basketball game and sang because she wasn't going to come back to West Virginia. She's like, I'm going to say, I know this event's canceled. You're going to find me another one.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, no, that's great.
Well, there is the senior center. Like, perfect. Let's go.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
I've got a thing called the Prison Chronicles coming out, and I've got to just, it's as a producer and also running another show, I've got to segment the time in, but it's basically ready to go. So it's going to come out in July. And even if I've got to produce some stuff after July and just release it a little bit, I wanted to do one big drop. I might have to segment it out, but it basically chronicles before, during, and after for some guys who've committed murder. One of the guys from the Wolf of Wall Street firm, and they talk about the system itself. And then I get some people from outside and they talk about the system in terms of nonprofits and academics when they look at incarceration and recidivism. And it's really powerful. I mean, it's incredible, the stories and the wisdom that comes out of these things. And when I think about me, because, and this as a storyteller, I represent the social conscious of what do we want from prison? Do I want to punish someone? Yeah, of course. But the reality is they're going to get out. So what condition do I want them in when they get out? And would I pick $200 in their pocket and no education as an outcome and expect something good to happen? No, that doesn't make any sense. And I don't, it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you fall on. When that person who's committed murder gets out, all they have are challenges. So how do we make it so that they're not in a position to make another terrible mistake? What do we owe them? And then when one of the guys says, prison was an extension of my community, I don't want that as an American. I don't want that to be the case.
Right.
I want that to be the exception, not an extension. It's terrible.
What sparked that path for you?
We had on a guy named Devon Bogan, and he went to the city of Richmond, California, which was off the charts with its violence. And he said, let me go find the worst 25 guys there are, the so-and-sos that are out there that are causing violence. And we generally know who they are, because their names come up. And it's I'm just going to invite them to be part of society again. Let's get them help. Let's case manage these guys and say, I offer you, here's what your future looks like. Here's your path as we see it, numbers wise. What if the city will give you one where it can be something else, and we'll deal with your anger management. We'll deal with your, your broken home, whatever it is. We can deal with these problems and we won't fail you because the guys who are helping us, they're all people like you, just 20 years older. So they'll walk you through the path. And basically they just they gave them uncles, so they had someone to be accountable to who only loved them and only trusted them, so I thought there's more there. We can do better at this. We can tell more of these stories because again, someone commits murder, wasn't their plan going in that day, most likely. That is such a rare thing. How do we rehabilitate? And one of the lessons we've learned is that if you start with everybody is redeemable and rehabilitatable, you have a much higher rate of success. Some people aren't going to be. Okay, fair enough.
Right.
But if you start with that, everybody's redeemable, everybody's rehabilitatable, how do we get that person rehabilitated to whatever level it is? I mean, Hinckley's out. He shot the president. He was bonkers when he did it. And he's out because he took 35 or something years to work on mentally getting better. So if we start with we're going to get these people rehabilitated and to some way, if possible, I mean, the criminally insane, okay, that's tough. But if we can get them reintroduced into regular life, that's the better outcome. So that's sort of the idea.
And the great part about that, in a story form, is not everybody will identify it with that specific story, but everybody's going to identify with the story, whether, you're broken because of your service and you got PTSD, or whether you're broken because of your environment and, you've got anxiety and you're struggling here. The fact that there are people that care, there are opportunities for second chances. The story itself can make a difference.
Yeah, it really can. It really can. And getting people who are maybe a little bit, unfair because they want a punitive outcome, but they don't have any context to to be allowed to change their mind, to be more rehabilitative in their assumption and desire, I'd like to give them the opportunity to hear from these folks, because they're not bad people. They've done horrible things, and they've done a lot of work, probably more than most people have, to rehabilitate themselves, to be accountable. And if we don't allow that, then let's just kill everybody who goes to jail.
When's that? That comes out in July?
Yeah, it comes out in July. Episode 1 should drop on July 15th, and then hopefully in short succession after that, if I can get all the pieces together, as the producer.
I know.
Like stuff like website. Here's this incredible story. I'm trying to figure out websites and, artwork and other things that are tertiary to this, vital, but so I'm working on all those things as I wrap everything up. But yeah, it's good. It's a really powerful story.
Oh, good. I'm excited. I'm excited. I like that.
Well, listen, thanks for coming on. Let's for sure do some more. And man, I love the heck out of talking about soccer with you. It's so much fun.
This was a blast. Thank you so much. I appreciate being on.